The first step to reaching your full potential is having the courage to start. At Strayer University, we help students take action by making higher education more affordable with access to up to 10 no-cost gen ed courses. Because our goal is helping you work toward yours, so you can always keep striving. Visit strayer.edu to learn more. No-cost gen ed provided by Strayer University affiliate Sophia Learning. Eligibility rules apply. Connect with us for details. In a world that's constantly changing, you have to move forward to change with it. At Strayer University, we see you striving to work harder and go further. That's why we provide you with the tools you need to get there, like offering a brand new laptop when you enroll in a bachelor's program, so you can do your coursework anytime, anywhere. Because our greatest strength is helping you unlock yours, so you can always keep striving. Visit strayer.edu to learn more. Eligibility rules, restrictions, and exclusions apply. Connect with us for details.
Welcome to the Having It All podcast, the show about what it takes to live an abundant, loving life. My name is Matthew Bivens, and I want to help you live with more clarity, confidence, and purpose so you can truly have it all. Let's do it. What's going on, my awesome friend? Welcome back to the podcast. I am Matthew Bivens, your balanced lifestyle coach. And whether this is your first time listening or you have been here since day one, way back in March of 2016, I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much and let you know that I appreciate you choosing to invest this time with me here today. Please, if you feel inspired, hit that subscribe button on whatever podcast app you are listening to this on right now. And if you ever want to reach out to me directly, maybe you want to send me some topic ideas for an episode, give me some feedback on a previous episode, or just say what's up, you can always email me directly at matthew@matthewbivens.com. Today's episode is all about the meaning of your life. At some point in time, perhaps even right now, you have asked yourself, what is the meaning of my life? What is the purpose of my life? Why am I here? If that's you right now, then first off, I just want you to know that I understand what that feels like. I really understand how excruciatingly frustrating, scary, or confusing having those thoughts and having those questions can be. I have been there. I was there for many, many, many years. I was there after reading so many self-help books, after watching hours and hours and hours of motivational talks on YouTube, after listening to all of these podcasts that promise to help me find answers to those critical life questions. And I continued to be frustrated with all that, even after joining programs and coaching groups. After doing all of that stuff, I still didn't really have clarity around what the meaning of my life was or the purpose for my life. So if you're here because this topic has really hit a nerve with you and seeing the title of this episode really struck a nerve with you, then my intention is that you leave this episode with something that is really going to help you arrive at an answer for the question. To get an answer to that question of what is the meaning of your life? What is the purpose for your life? I want to help you to get that answer once and for all. So I bet that you didn't know that this very podcast, Having It All, was created because I was attempting to answer those questions myself. I was trying to answer the question of what is the meaning and purpose of my life? So let me tell you a little story. I grew up in a family that really much emphasized education. My grandmother, my grandfather, they were a school teacher and a principal, respectively, and they valued education over just about everything else. And they pushed their kids, one of whom was my father, they pushed their kids to get degrees and advanced degrees and to have long-term professional careers. And that's what their kids did. And so growing up, I saw that and I adopted that same sort of expectation, right? That there was a path for me. And if I were to follow the steps and walk that path, then everything would be clear and everything would be awesome for me. So high school, I did my thing for most of high school. And then junior year rolled around and I'm looking around and my peers and my friends, they're all starting to identify the schools that they want to go to. And they wanted to go to specific schools because of the programs that those schools offered. To me, it appeared that my friends and my peers, they knew what they wanted out of life, and they were following a plan to get it. Now, of course, all these years later, I can see things a little bit differently. At the time, I didn't realize that the majority of my friends were just like me. They just didn't know what the heck they were doing. But to me, they all had a plan, and they were following that plan. And that was my perspective back then. So that's when I first started to feel frustrated, confused, a bit scared and nervous that I didn't have a plan, that I didn't have an answer to what was I supposed to be doing, what was my purpose. Fast forward a few years, and now I'm in college. And once again, I'm surrounded by my friends and my peers who were all on this professional track. My roommates and my closest friends in college, they were on a very clear track. And me, here I am, I didn't know what I wanted to do in college in terms of my major. I floated through those years. I switched majors so many times, and for a while, I went undeclared. That means I just did not have any sort of major, and I went undeclared as long as I possibly could until my university said, hey, you have to pick a major or you have to get out. So eventually I settled on psychology, and that's what I graduated with, a bachelor's in psychology, but I had no idea what I wanted to do with that degree. And so I stuck around school for a little while longer. I took a year off, and then I went back to school. I went to business school and got another degree because staying in school longer meant that I didn't have to answer those questions about meaning and purpose and career. So after school, after getting several degrees, I went and got a job. That's what you're supposed to do. I got a job, and I worked at that job for a few years. And then on paper, it started to look like I had answers to those questions, right? I have this degree. I have that degree. I have a title next to my name. I have a business card with a title on it. It starts to look like I have clarity and I have discovered meaning and purpose for myself. But truthfully, I didn't. So this pattern kind of continues for years and years and years into my early 20s, into my mid 20s, into my late 20s. Fast forward again, I'm no longer down in Florida. I'm now in Atlanta, and I've linked up to a community here in Atlanta, a health and wellness community called Your Day Balanced Game. Mentioned them before. And it's through this community that I joined an accountability group called a Circle of Influence, a COI. So again, by now, I have been doing some personal development work, self-improvement work, reading books, watching things. So I've been trying to tackle this question of meaning and purpose from a different angle. So in my group, we do a thing called an epic challenge, where each week one person is highlighted and they get to talk about an area in their life where they're feeling very stuck and they just can't get around it. They can't figure out an answer to their challenge, which is why it's called an epic challenge. So it's my turn, and I shared with them that my epic challenge is that I don't feel like I have meaning and purpose in my life. And that is frustrating me, and I'm getting worried, and it's creating stress, and I don't know what to do about it. It's been a struggle for many, many, many years. So my feedback from the group, because the group gave me collective feedback, their feedback was, cool, got it. I understand why that's frustrating. I really do. We get it. And I get why that's a big challenge for you. So what have you done specifically so far to arrive at a solution? That was their question. Like, what have I actually done? And my answer was, well, I've read these books, and I listed out all these different books. I listen to these podcasts every week, and I listed out those podcasts. I went and I joined this program and that program, and I'm learning from this teacher and that teacher. And their reply to me was, awesome, awesome, awesome. But that doesn't tell me what you've actually done. What specific actions have you taken that's helping you to arrive at an answer for your questions around meaning and purpose? And that's when I had an aha moment. Honestly, it was more like a duh moment. I realized that learning about my challenge, reading about my challenge, really trying to understand this challenge was not the same thing as solving it. And I was confusing all of this collecting of knowledge that I was doing, that I had been doing for years. I was confusing that with measurable action. And then I was getting frustrated when all of my perceived actions were getting me nowhere. Because I could recite to you all these different ways to find meaning and purpose. I could regurgitate the things that I had learned and listened to and watched and read. But I couldn't answer the question of what specific things have I done to move the needle in my life.
You know a spot, but not just a spot, the spot. Actually, with the all-new Nissan Frontier, you know a bunch of them. But the key to these great spots? Being able to reach them in the first place. Your spot is out there. Find your frontier in the all-new 2023 Nissan Frontier with standard 310 horsepower, advanced tech, and 281 pound-feet of torque.
So I'm going to pause that story for you. I'm going to play a clip now. This is a clip from a YouTube video, and let's go ahead and listen together.
What is the meaning of life?
Stop thinking so much about life. Life is made out of actions because it's not gonna fly around somewhere and by luck you're gonna grab it. You find something and give meaning to it, something you like to spend your time with, something that gives you purpose, then no need to wait for the sense of life to come. What it means is you start to create that life that you would like to live.
The big takeaway from that clip and from this podcast episode is that in order to answer those very important life questions of what is the meaning of my life, what is my life's purpose, what am I here to do, in order to answer those questions, you must act. Answers don't come through meditating a lot or praying about it or wishing super, super hard. You have to get into some sort of specific action. You have to experience real things. You have to try things and have some of them fail and some of them work in order to realize what it is that you like, what it is that you absolutely hate, and then slowly over time, answers to your questions about meaning and purpose are revealed. In the clip that you listened to, the voice you heard was Shaolin Master Shin Hang Yi. And in the clip, he says, you find something that you like and you give the meaning to it. That is so profound. You find things that you like and enjoy and you give meaning to those things. How many times when you're feeling frustrated about life not having meaning, how many times are you sitting around waiting and searching and trying to find meaning? That's what we do. We try to wait for an aha moment or a light bulb moment where life suddenly has meaning, where I feel like I have purpose. But in fact, what you heard in that clip is you're going about it the wrong way. You're going about it in an ineffective way. You have to give meaning to things. And that's where the meaning comes from. In the clip, he says, you create the life you'd like to live rather than wait for that life to come. This, my friends, is exactly how I arrived at meaning and purpose in my life. So back to my story. I'm sitting in that group, that COI. I'm receiving feedback that my approach to answering my question was ineffective. And then the group conversation began to evolve a little bit. It evolved to them asking me about what are some of the things that I'm interested in. What am I doing right now that's bringing me a sense of enjoyment or curiosity or flow? Flow is when you're doing something and time just slips away and you become completely absorbed in the activity. And for me, I couldn't really answer the fun. I couldn't really answer the flow, but I could answer the part about what was I curious about. And for me, it was podcasting. Around that time, I had just gotten into podcasting. And I had started a business, specifically a marketing podcast. I didn't even know if I really liked the medium of podcasting yet, but it was new, it was novel, it was exciting, and I enjoyed learning this new thing. I was also pretty clear at that time that I was not passionate about talking about business and marketing. So I had been doing marketing for many, many years. I was good at it. But I did not stay up at night thinking about the marketing topics I want to talk about on the podcast. But I did like talking about self-improvement. I was very much enjoying the conversations that were happening in my COI and talking about things that I was learning in the books like Power vs. Force, The Four Agreements, The Tao of Health, Sex, and Longevity, and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That was very interesting to me. And that was something that I had been exploring all on my own for several years at that point. So then the question turned to, all right, so what path do you feel like you're on right now with your personal development studies? If that's something that's interesting to you, why are you studying those things? I thought about it for a moment and I said, the path I'm on is I'm attempting to answer the question of how can I have an incredible relationship, deep, fulfilling connections with people? How can I have health and vitality and energy in my body? How can I have access to resources and wealth and have all of my basic needs met while feeling joyful and grateful and present each day? Because I see so many people around me who will have one of those things, but not the other. They will have the family and the spouse, but they sacrifice time with them to go and pursue making a lot of money. Or they have a thriving career, but their health is down the toilet. And then later in their later years, they have to spend all their money to try to reclaim their health. So my question is, how can I have all of that? How can I have it all? Because I believe that people can have it all. I believe that you don't have to forfeit one over the other. And yet, so many people have an ineffective approach to having it all. And then it clicked, right? It clicked for me. What I wanted to get into, what was interesting and curious for me was a podcast, which is something that I was already exploring, a podcast about having it all, a topic that I was very passionate about answering for myself. And that to me sounded pretty interesting. And then I added this element in there. I said to myself, all right, well, how can doing this thing, a podcast about having it all, how can it help me to become a greater version of myself? And I said, well, if I have to face some fears while doing this, then pursuing this idea of mine is going to actually help me to improve. And so at the time, I was very fearful of doing interviews. I was especially fearful of doing interviews with people that I didn't know and people who had achieved a higher level of mastery than me. Because talking to them felt very confronting. It would confront this tendency I had to compare myself to others, and it would make me feel that imposter syndrome, that I didn't belong in that room, I didn't belong in the same conversation with them. So I decided to start an interview-based podcast where I talk to successful men and women about the topic of having it all. And my goal was to learn the ins and outs of how they have built a life with incredible relationships, deep connections, with health, vitality, wealth, and joy. Boom. There you go. You all know the rest. I left that COI meeting with a very clear action item that I could do. And so I did. I got into action. I recorded the final goodbye episode for my marketing show, hit publish, got to work developing on this new show called Having It All. I reached out to people that I wanted to interview, and I was scared the whole time I did that, especially when the top guy that I went after at the time, he said yes. He immediately said yes. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually have to do this thing. So then I started recording podcast episodes. I started recording interviews. And in March 2016, I hit publish and the show went live. And then after that, week after week after week, I just kept taking action. My number one goal at the time was to reach 100 episodes. The only reason I did that is because I felt that after producing 100 episodes, doing 100 interviews, or at least getting behind the mic and speaking that many times, I would figure out some answer to the question of meaning and purpose and direction for my life. I believe that if I took that many steps, that many specific action items, I would get some sort of clarity. And guess what? I got a little more clarity. It didn't come right away. It took a little while longer for me to really hone and dial things in. But you know what? All along the way, through each one of those episodes, all the way up till today, we're at 450 something, I think, maybe even more. All along the way, I was acting, meaning I was taking action. I was doing things. I was learning. I was evolving. And this podcast is proof of that. I no longer do an interview show. I evolved the podcast beyond an interview show. The format of the show, the topics of the show, even the music has evolved over the years, mirroring my own evolution.
You know a spot, but not just a spot, the spot. Actually, with the all-new Nissan Frontier, you know a bunch of them. But the key to these great spots? Being able to reach them in the first place. Your spot is out there. Find your frontier in the all-new 2023 Nissan Frontier with standard 310 horsepower, advanced tech, and 281 pound-feet of torque.
And so the point is of this story, and the point of that clip that you heard before, is that if you're struggling with the questions about meaning and purpose and direction and clarity, and you aren't taking any actions, then my friend, that's exactly why you're struggling. You aren't doing anything. And an action isn't get started for a week and then stop. Get started for a month and then stop. No, action is consistent over and over and over and over until things click. It might take a week, a month, a year, 10 years, but you just keep going. Because eventually you start to fall in love with the process. And once that happens, you have won. It's no longer about this destination and having this big aha moment of clarity and light bulbs and streamers and balloons and horns celebrating that you now have figured it out. Nah, it's not about that. It's about the journey. It's about the process. It's about trying something, seeing how it works. It's about learning. It's about failing. It's about tweaking and evolving. And all along the way, you're having all these experiences. You start to realize that all these people that you look up to and idolize because you think they have purpose and clarity, that they're still seeking, gaining more purpose and clarity because they're acting. They're taking action. They're moving. They're doing things. That is what you got to do. And you learn as you go along. Things become more clear the more steps you take. Here's an analogy for you. Imagine you're sitting in the middle of a forest with dense trees all around you, 360 degrees, just trees. And that forest is all misty as well. And you're trying to see through those trees to see the very edge of the forest where there's a clearing, supposedly. And that clearing will allow you to get out of the forest. But you're just sitting there in the middle of all those trees and you're turning your head left and you're turning your head right and turning your head left again. And you're squinting and you're trying to see through things. But you haven't moved. You're just sitting there. You're not going to get any clarity by simply sitting there, by studying the trees, by noticing the direction of the wind. The only way for you to get clarity and finally see through those trees and make it to the clearing is you have to start walking. You got to walk. You just got to pick a direction and walk. And eventually, when you walk far enough and long enough, the trees start to thin out, the fog starts to lift, and things become more clear. On your journey, it might be that listening to podcasts and reading books and buying courses and doing all that stuff is the equivalent of you sitting on your butt in the middle of the forest, wondering why you cannot see the clearing. So my question for you, the question that I really recommend you ponder for a little while is, how consistently have you applied the lessons and the action items from all those things that you've been learning? How consistently have you been applying them? Rate yourself, 1 to 10. 1 is I have not been consistent at all. I haven't even started. 10 is I have been incredibly consistent. I have taken so many leaps of faith and I keep moving even if I'm not clear where I'm going. So what's your number? Anything less than a 9, and guess what? You figured out your issue. You're spending too much time thinking, too much time learning, gathering knowledge, ruminating about your issue, feeling sorry for yourself, and not enough time in specific action that you can measure and tweak. And yes, I realize it's pretty ironic that here I am on a podcast telling you to stop doing things like listening to podcasts, but I am. And this is not the first time that I've said this. If you've been listening to this show for a while, there's many times over the course of this podcast where I'm like, listen, if this is all that you're doing, just listening to me, but you're still feeling frustrated, stop listening. Go do something. Go get into action. And if you feel inspired, come back and listen some more. I would much rather you go and take some actions and have some breakthroughs in your life than listen to me all day long. Here's another quick story. In 2020, I connected with a longtime listener of the show. He reached out to me and he wanted some feedback from me on stuff that he was going through in life. And he mentioned that he wanted to write a book one day. Well, what's pretty cool is a couple weeks ago, that same listener emailed me to let me know that he had written his book. And his book was going to be coming out later this year, later in 2023. And he asked me to write the foreword for the book. So from our emails and our relationship that we built over the years from 2020 all the way until now, I know that this guy, he felt very lost at times. He felt very confused at times. He felt very unclear. He had taken a certain course of action in his life that had gotten him so far, but he still had those big questions about meaning and purpose. But you know what he didn't do? He didn't just sit around and ponder those questions and get frustrated at them. He got into action. He identified one thing that struck some sort of chord within him, writing, and he moved beyond all the excuses and all the fears about why he shouldn't do it. Well, if I start writing this book, it's going to take me away from my career and, I got to apply myself to this job and this business and my family and it. He got beyond all of that stuff because he recognized that there was this thing deep within him that kept nagging at him, and he just started working on it. And now 3 years later, he's about to be a published author of what I'm sure is going to be a bestseller. Shout out to you, Brian. So to wrap this up, to complete this episode, I am challenging you to identify one very specific action that's going to get you a step closer towards clarity. Just one little step, one little action. And your action should be SMART. I'm sure you know the acronym. It's got to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Your challenge is to figure out one thing that you can do that isn't reading something, listening to something, watching something. It's got to be a more substantial action. Identify the one thing and do it. And if you're not open to that idea, if you've listened to this whole podcast trying to get some clarity around why you don't have meaning in your life or purpose, and here I am dropping it in your lap and you're saying, I'm not really open to it, I think I should find another answer, then explore where that resistance is coming from. Because guess what? I've been coaching people for a very long time on how they can connect with meaning and purpose in their lives. And although you want to think that there's an art to it and that you are this unique soul, this unique sunflower that has this very unique process all to yourself, guess what? It's not true. It's just not true when it comes to this. And the path to gaining clarity is much more tried and true than you know. And when you can get out of that denial and start moving with faith, faith being trust and surrender, then you might just discover that there is clarity on the other side of consistent action. So, that, my friend, is what I have for you today. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I appreciate you listening to this episode. If you're sitting here digesting all of it, hit pause maybe, reflect a little bit on what I've shared. And if you have more questions for me, if you have feedback, if something that I said really struck a chord, struck a nerve, and you just got to let me know, email me. You can send me an email, matthew@matthewbivens.com. One of the things that, once again, I value more than you listening is you taking some sort of action and getting something as a result of listening. Please get into action. I'm telling you, that's where the clarity happens. That's where the ahas happen. All right. That's it for me today. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. I'm sending you so much love. My name is Matthew Bivens, and here is to you having it all. Quick note about the Having It All podcast. I am not a doctor nor a licensed therapist. I'm a man with a story and a passion for conscious conversation. My thoughts, opinions, and beliefs are my own. So please consult with your doctor or healthcare provider regarding any questions or issues you have related to your personal physical or mental health.
The first step to reaching your full potential is having the courage to start. At Strayer University, we help students take action by making higher education more affordable with access to up to 10 no-cost gen ed courses. Because our goal is helping you work toward yours, so you can always keep striving. Visit strayer.edu to learn more. No-cost gen ed provided by Strayer University affiliate Sophia Learning. Eligibility rules apply. Connect with us for details.